Pause for a moment. Take just 10 seconds and think deeply about the digital footprint you left behind today. Think about every query you typed into a search bar, every email you composed and sent into the void, every video that caught your attention and held it for minutes or hours, every location you looked up, every route you navigated, every article you clicked on, every message you began typing and then thought better of and deleted before sending, every single action, every deliberate tap on glass, every seemingly insignificant search, every video that played while you were distracted, every hyperlink that pulled you deeper into the web. All of it, every fragment of your digital existence today flowed through the servers of a single corporation. And that corporation, with meticulous precision, retained it. Every keystroke, every pause, every choice. That company is Google, and the time has come for a reckoning. This is Hardware Intel, and what you are about to hear is not conjecture. It is not conspiracy. It is the documented reality of what happens when you hand over 2 decades of your life to an ecosystem built not for your benefit, but for the monetization of your behavior. I am deleting my Google account in 2026, and before you dismiss this as overreaction or technophobia, understand this. I'm not doing this because Google is a villain in some simplistic narrative. I am doing this because I sat down, looked with clear eyes at what I had voluntarily surrendered over the years, and realized that the exchange I had been making was no longer acceptable. The cost had become too high. The value proposition had collapsed under the weight of its own implications. And I believe that if you saw what I saw, if you confronted the same evidence with the same clarity, you would arrive at the same conclusion. Let us begin with the number that fundamentally recontextualized everything for me, $349.8 billion. That is the revenue Google generated in 2024 alone. Not over a decade, not cumulatively since its founding, in 1 calendar year. And here is the detail that should arrest your attention completely. The overwhelming majority of that staggering sum, the engine that powers this financial colossus, derives from a single source: advertising. In the first quarter of 2024, 76.3% of Google's total revenue came directly from advertisements. Not hardware sales, not software subscriptions, advertisements. But these are not the generic spray and pray advertisements of the pre-digital era. These are targeted with surgical precision, personalized to the individual, delivered to specific human beings with specific interests in specific geographic locations at specific psychological moments. Because Google possesses knowledge about those individuals that is more comprehensive than their own self-awareness. And where did Google acquire this encyclopedic understanding of billions of people? They did not steal it. They did not hack it. We gave it to them. Freely. Daily. Through Gmail, through search, through Chrome, through Maps, through YouTube, through Android devices that sit in our pockets and track our movements. We became the willing suppliers of the raw material that fuels the most lucrative advertising apparatus ever constructed in human history, and the vast majority of us never stopped to interrogate what exactly we were supplying, or whether the transaction was remotely equitable. I am here to tell you that in 2026, the answer for me is unambiguous. The exchange is not worth it. And I'm going to walk you through every service, every product, every data stream, and show you exactly what I discovered and exactly how I replaced it. Let us start with Gmail because this is where the foundation of my digital relationship with Google was laid. I opened my Gmail account in 2008. 18 years of correspondence. 18 years of receipts, medical records, financial statements, job applications, intimate personal letters, business negotiations, every category of human communication that can be rendered in text, all of it residing on Google's infrastructure. For most of those 18 years, I operated under a comfortable assumption. My emails lived on Google's servers. Google protected them from external threats. The system functioned. Then I learned the history, and the history is not prominently featured in Google's marketing materials. When Gmail launched in 2004, it offered something unprecedented: 1 gigabyte of free storage at a time when competitors measured their offerings in megabytes. The offer seemed miraculous, and the price was this. Google's automated systems would scan the content of your emails, every email you sent, every email you received, to serve you targeted advertisements. The system read your words. It understood context. It identified topics. If you wrote an email discussing vacation plans, advertisements for hotels appeared. If you received correspondence about a medical appointment, advertisements related to that condition materialized in your inbox. This continued for 13 years. 13 years during which every piece of correspondence that passed through your Gmail account was read, analyzed, and used to construct an advertising profile. 13 years. In 2017, under mounting pressure from privacy advocates and significantly from corporate clients using Google Workspace, who were deeply uncomfortable with the idea that their internal business communications were being analyzed for advertising purposes, Google announced they would cease scanning email content for ad targeting, and they did stop that specific practice. That is factually accurate and must be acknowledged honestly. Since 2017, Google has stated unequivocally that the content of Gmail messages is not used to target advertisements at users. But here is what stopping actually meant in practice. Google stopped scanning your emails to serve you ads inside the Gmail interface. But they never stopped scanning your emails altogether. Google's automated systems still read every email. They scan for spam. They scan for phishing attempts. They categorize your inbox into those helpful tabs: primary, social, promotions. They power Smart Reply, those 3 suggested responses that appear beneath incoming messages. They power Smart Compose, which predicts the next words as you type. All of these features that users appreciate and rely upon, require Google's systems to read the content of your messages. The scanning never stopped. It simply changed purpose. Google now says they scan your email for features, not for advertisements. That distinction is real, but consider what it actually means in practice. Google has access to your correspondence. Their systems read your messages. The technical capability to analyze that content exists, is fully operational, and is exercised every single day. It is currently directed at providing features rather than targeting ads. But the barrier between those two applications is a policy decision, not a technical limitation. Policies change, leadership changes, corporate priorities shift, acquisitions happen. And the content of my inbox, 18 years of my most sensitive communications, remains on Google's servers, readable by their infrastructure, subject to whatever that policy becomes tomorrow or next year or 5 years from now. There is another dimension to this that almost no one discusses when the subject of Gmail privacy arises: end-to-end encryption, or more accurately, the complete absence of it. Gmail does not employ end-to-end encryption. When you send a Gmail, Google holds the encryption keys. They can decrypt and read your messages. The encryption Gmail uses protects your data while it travels from Google's servers to your device, but it cannot protect the content of your email from Google itself. Google can read your mail. The technical capability exists. They state they do not use it for advertising, but the capability is there. Compare that architecture to the service I switched to, Proton Mail. Based in Geneva, Switzerland, a jurisdiction with some of the strongest data protection laws on the planet, Proton Mail uses end-to-end encryption as the default for all correspondence between Proton users. When I send an email to another Proton user, it is encrypted before it leaves my device. Proton servers store the message in encrypted form. Proton itself cannot read it. They do not possess the decryption key. The only individuals who can read my correspondence are me and my intended recipient. Not Proton. Not a government issuing a legal demand to Proton. Not a sophisticated attacker who compromises Proton's infrastructure. Just me and the person I chose to communicate with. Proton Mail has over 100 million users as of 2023. This is not a fringe service for the paranoid. It is a mainstream product built on a fundamentally different philosophy than Gmail. One where your email is genuinely private in the technical, cryptographic sense of that word. Not merely private as a policy promise subject to change. Now let us turn our attention to Chrome, because this story involves a courtroom, a $5 billion lawsuit, and internal communications from Google employees describing their own product as, and these are not my words, effectively a lie. In 2020, a class action lawsuit was filed against Google alleging that the company had been tracking and collecting data from users who believed they were browsing privately using Chrome's incognito mode. You know incognito, the dark interface. The icon of a figure wearing a hat and glasses, the message that told you that you could now browse privately. Millions of people activated incognito mode specifically because they believed it protected them from surveillance. When they needed to search for something sensitive, a medical symptom, a personal question they did not want recorded, a private purchase, they went incognito. The lawsuit alleged that Google was not honoring that expectation, that even in incognito mode, Google's analytics, advertising tools, and other tracking infrastructure embedded across the web were still collecting data about users who believed they were invisible. The lawsuit sought $5 billion in damages and proceeded through the courts for years. The settlement reached and made public in April 2024 revealed several things the public had never seen before. The settlement required Google to delete billions of data records collected from incognito sessions. It required Google to rewrite the incognito mode disclaimer to accurately inform users what it does and does not protect them from. The updated disclaimer now reads, "This won't change how data is collected by websites you visit and the services they use, including Google." They changed the language from "you can browse privately" to "you can browse more privately." More privately, not privately, more privately than before, but not actually private. And then there were the internal communications. The lawsuit surfaced messages between Google employees in which they described incognito mode in remarkably candid terms. They called it a confusing mess. They described it as a problem of professional ethics and basic honesty. They wrote that it was effectively a lie. One executive argued internally that incognito should not be called private because it risked exacerbating known misconceptions among users. These are Google's own employees writing to each other about their own product, stating plainly that the word private for a mode they marketed as private was misleading. But the incognito lawsuit represents only one layer of Chrome's privacy issues. The deeper, more pervasive problem is what Chrome does during regular browsing when no privacy protections are activated at all, and that involves something called browser fingerprinting. The Electronic Frontier Foundation operates a tool called Cover Your Tracks that tests your browser's privacy protections by measuring what information it inadvertently reveals about you. When Chrome was tested through this tool in 2025 and 2026, the results were consistent. Chrome failed most privacy benchmarks. Third-party cookies are not fully blocked by default in standard browsing, and fingerprinting protections are minimal at best. Fingerprinting is insidious because most people do not understand it, and it is more powerful than cookies in one critical respect. You cannot delete a fingerprint. When your browser connects to a website, it involuntarily reveals dozens of minute details about itself. Your screen resolution, the fonts installed on your system, the way your graphics card renders certain visual elements, your time zone, your browser plugins, your hardware configuration. Individually, none of these details identifies you, but combined, the specific pattern of all these signals creates a profile that is often unique to your exact device. It is a fingerprint. And unlike a cookie, which you can clear from your browser settings, you cannot opt out of your fingerprint. You cannot delete it. Even in incognito mode, your browser fingerprint remains identical. A website can identify you by this fingerprint even after you have cleared all cookies and browsing history. Chrome, with approximately 66% global browser market share according to 2025 data, is the foundation upon which the web's tracking ecosystem is built. When Chrome has weak fingerprinting protections and does not block third-party tracking by default, that single design choice affects the majority of internet users on the planet. I switched to Firefox. Firefox is developed by Mozilla, a non-profit organization. Firefox has significantly stronger fingerprinting protections than Chrome. It has enhanced tracking protection enabled by default, blocking known fingerprinting scripts and third-party trackers. It is open source, meaning independent security researchers can verify exactly what it does and does not collect. Mozilla's business model is not built on harvesting user data for advertising. They generate revenue primarily through their partnership with Google as the default search engine, a relationship they disclose transparently and through premium features, not through analyzing what their users do online. For those who want even more aggressive privacy protections, Brave Browser, built on the same Chromium engine as Chrome but with extensive privacy protections layered on top, is another excellent option. Both Firefox and Brave are free. Both take approximately 5 minutes to set up. And both offer a fundamentally different relationship with your data than Chrome provides. Now we must discuss Google Search, and I need to be intellectually honest here because honesty is the entire point of this. Google Search is genuinely extraordinary. It processes over 10 billion searches per day. It serves over 4 billion users. It commands over 82% of the global search engine market, and there is a legitimate reason for that dominance. Google Search is, by most objective measures, the best search engine in the world for the majority of queries, finding information quickly, returning accurate results, understanding context and intent. Google is unmatched. I am not going to pretend otherwise. But what Google Search knows about you over time, the accumulated portrait it constructs from your queries, is deeply unsettling when you confront it in its totality. Every search query you have ever made while logged into your Google account has been stored. The dates, the times, the exact words, your entire search history, what you were anxious about, what you were curious about, what you were planning, what you were struggling with. It is a comprehensive record that Google retains. Google calls it your web and app activity, and you can view it yourself right now by navigating to myactivity.google.com. If you have maintained a Google account for years and never changed the default settings, what you will find there will likely stop you cold. It is a complete, searchable archive of your life online. Google does provide controls. You can set an auto-delete period of 3, 18, or 36 months. You can pause web and app activity entirely. You can manually delete your entire history. These controls are real and they function as advertised, but they require you to know they exist, to find them buried in settings menus, and to actively use them. The default is to save everything indefinitely. And for the overwhelming majority of Google account holders, the default is what is running. There is also something called your Google advertising profile, which you can view by going to adsettings.google.com. This page displays what Google believes about you based on your online behavior, your estimated age range, your inferred interests, topics Google has determined you care about based on your activity, categories that describe in Google's algorithmic understanding the kind of person you are. It is a profile that advertisers purchase access to. When an advertiser wants to show advertisements to people interested in a specific topic, they are buying access to the pattern that describes your behavior, even if they never see your name attached to it. I switched my primary search engine to DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo does not track your searches. They do not build a profile of you over time. They do not use your previous searches to influence future results. You type a query, you receive results, and that transaction is complete. DuckDuckGo does not know who made that search or what that person has searched for in the past. The search results are not personalized in the way Google's are, precisely because they are not tracking you to personalize them. But for the vast majority of searches, they are more than adequate. For the rare occasions where Google's depth of indexing is genuinely necessary, you can type !G before your search in DuckDuckGo to route that specific query to Google. It is the best of both worlds for those infrequent moments when DuckDuckGo falls short. Let us turn now to Google Maps, because this involves a specific legal settlement that made headlines for a news cycle and then vanished from public consciousness, but its implications are profound. For years, Google Maps tracked your precise physical location whenever you used the application. And in many cases, even when you were not actively using the app, if you had an Android device with a Google account and location services enabled, your device was periodically reporting its location to Google. Those location reports were being stored in something called location history. This was not hidden. It was documented in Google's settings. But it was also not prominently communicated, and the settings to control it were buried in places most users never visited. The result was that Google possessed a detailed timeline of where millions of people had physically been, down to specific locations and timestamps, your home address, your doctor's office, your place of worship, the political meetings you attended, the protests you participated in, the hospital you visited multiple times in a single month. All of it logged, timestamped, and stored on Google's servers. And then law enforcement began requesting access, and Google had to comply. Law enforcement agencies in the United States began using what they termed geofence warrants. These are requests asking Google to identify all devices that had been present in a specific geographic location at a specific time. If a crime occurred at a location, law enforcement could request from Google a list of every device, and therefore every person, who had been near that location during the relevant time window. This practice ensnared innocent people. Cases emerged of individuals who had been near a crime scene for completely benign reasons, riding their bicycle, jogging, commuting to work, being identified as suspects because their Android phone's location data was in Google's database and their data appeared in a geofence warrant response. Google faced lawsuits from multiple state attorneys general over location tracking practices. In the settlement of a lawsuit brought by 40 states, Google paid $62 million and agreed to be more transparent about how location data is collected and stored. Google has since made significant changes. Beginning December 1st, 2024, Location History, now rebranded as Timeline, began storing data locally on your device rather than on Google's servers. Google changed the default auto-delete period to 3 months. These are genuine privacy improvements and should be acknowledged honestly. But here is what has not changed. If you enable Timeline and choose the encrypted backup option, your location data does go to Google's servers again, encrypted but present. And even with local storage, if you are signed into a Google account on an Android device, your location signals are still used for other purposes, improving Google Maps for everyone, helping businesses estimate how many visitors their advertisements drive to physical locations, powering features like popular times at businesses. The flow of location data has not ceased. It has simply been reconfigured. I switched to Apple Maps with personalized directions turned off. Apple Maps does not have the same reach as Google Maps in terms of traffic prediction accuracy in some regions, but for the core function of navigation, it is excellent. And Apple's business model is fundamentally different from Google's. Apple generates revenue selling hardware and subscription services, not from advertising data. Location data in Apple Maps is not used to construct an advertising profile. If you do not use an Apple device, OpenStreetMap-based applications like Osmand or Maps.me are strong alternatives that do not require a Google account and operate on community-contributed mapping data. Let me pause here and present you with what I believe is the most critical frame for understanding this entire issue, because individual features and settings are one thing, but the larger architecture is something else entirely. Google does not know you from one service in isolation. Google knows you across all of its services simultaneously. The thing that makes Google fundamentally different from most companies is the combination of breadth and depth of their data collection. Your search queries tell Google what you are thinking about. Your Gmail tells Google who you communicate with and the substance of those communications. Your Maps tells Google where you physically go throughout your day. Your YouTube tells Google what captures your attention and for how long. Your Chrome tells Google what websites you visit and when. Your Android tells Google what applications you use, what you purchase, and what your daily routine looks like. Your Google Photos tells Google what you look like, who your family members are, where you have taken photographs. None of these individual data streams is catastrophically revealing on its own. But Google does not experience them as individual streams. Google experiences them as a unified river, one profile, one person seen from every possible angle, through every possible lens, across every hour of every day. The search you made at 2 a.m, the route you took to work this morning, the video you watched twice in a row last Tuesday, the email about your health situation that sat in your inbox for 3 weeks, the appointment you navigated to in Maps, all of it, one profile, yours. This is hardware intel, and I'm telling you that after 18 years, I am walking away. Not because Google is evil, but because I finally understand the exchange I was making, and I have decided it is no longer acceptable. Your data, your choice. Make it an informed one.